Okay, finally, we are live. While we were waiting, I was listening to some of the songs on album 22, and you can find it at album22.com, which is a phenomenal compilation album that brought together some amazing artists that ultimately put together a playlist that have uplifting songs designed to heal hearts and help minds rise above the chaos that you'll find outside of yourself. And I recognize that the lighting could be better, but to have light rays streaming over my face actually seems beautifully significant for what I would like to actually use this time to do is to tell the story of Rome. But I want to say it as the preface to the real story of Rome that we're actually writing together with our own stories when we take back the first person perspective in our own story. So I would love for you, which is a second person, because I'm talking to you as the first person in my story, I want you to know that you're invited to come on a journey inward, where we are going to find those parts of ourselves that we never expected to be in there. And we're going to actually work with our emotions so that we stop judging ourselves when we go into lower emotional states that feel more dense and weighted down because they have more baggage with them. They've been more uncomfortable for longer. So with that being said, I'm going to ask for your help in getting this message out to more people today so that we can actually start playing together in a way that uplifts and inspires us all to play at a higher level, because that's what is required now. We need to be able to actually play at higher levels emotionally with one another. And we need to feel safe enough to do it. So I'm creating opportunities for us to be able to do exactly that in hopes that it helps us become ready. Come be more ready to actually be ourselves in good company with others who are willing to do the same. It matters in a significant way. And I am so excited to play with those who are willing to do the inner work, which is what is real, relatable, ethical, altruistic, and loving. Those elements of real actually are how we heal, because we're willing to feel through the emotions. And actually, Stephanie, that is here in the house as well, does a lot around emotions and working with rage specifically, which is not a floor within my own high rise that I am as well versed in as to be able to guide people through specifically that one. But I think it's amazing when you do have such experience with that emotion to be able to support others through that. And that's what we can do better when we're in community. So I really want to make all of my content more real, which is relatable, ethical, altruistic, and loving. And I really want to help create opportunities where we can feel through some of the heavier things within ourselves in good company, and to also recognize the sacred sojourn of the soul that we all go through as we become more whole and call back fragments that we had left behind before. So what I want to also recognize is that I'm going to share a history of his story of Rome, which is not the one that's commonly told specifically, but is the one that I have found because I have flipped enough rocks and asked enough questions and got to the root of how we're in this situation, which I do believe to be humanism. Ironically enough, we all believe ourselves to be the hues of man, when we are actually meant to be the whole man, not just the hue of man. And so when we recognize that we are meant to be whole men and women, we can also then move away from having to use those labels to, instead of using those labels, recognize that in the hierarchy of creation, the top two tiers have really been where we have gotten into conflict with one another. The top two tiers being the creator of all at the very top that created us and gave us dominion over all, land, air, and water, which are uncapitalized because they're unspecified. It just refers to all of it, not just some of it. And we have to see how then the real version of reality was converted into a counterfeit, which was just one aspect or element of it, which is where colors of law and colors of right come into the frame. Colors of law and colors of right mean if you change your word because our word is meant to be our bond, then our word is no longer our bond. And so that is how we seem to be less honorable, if that makes sense. We seem to be less honorable because we become more real, and the more that we heal, the more uncomfortable we feel to those who are afraid to do the deep diving that we've done, to be able to go through as one that actually supports others to do what they have done. So we get led by one who has walked the way they are telling us about instead of one who has only read about it. We have to be willing to actually be so real that we go through it in order to guide others through it after us, not before. Don't call people to come with you on a journey of discovery you're uncertain about just to make sure you've got company and entertainment along the way at their expense, when we could really start playing together better by actually allowing one another to stand in our power, doing the thing that we're best at, and supporting someone else in doing what they're best at too. Giving space for both to be able to be free to expand and also be together, which is what Bruce Lipton's honeymoon effect refers to. That honeymoon effect is when at first our dysfunctions compensate for one another. And so someone else's dysfunction feels really comfortable to us because it masks our own for a time. But eventually the honeymoon effect wears off, and then suddenly you find what was under the mask the whole time and you don't like it because it's uncomfortable. And it's now just annoying because no longer is it trauma bonding as we do when we are wounding out with one another. But instead, now it's a nuisance because it's the externalization of that which is inside, which is what we need to deal with first. We don't need someone else to change if it is in our experience. There's something in us that is attracting that. So what is this? What is in us that is attracting that? Because if we change this, that will automatically change because our resonance and frequency will change. And actually, I earlier did a return of spirit reading for a friend here in the house, Hikari, who's an amazing musician from Japan. And he is living here at Doherty's, where I am coming to visit. And right is what, oh my God, yes, it is, of course. So do you want to know why I'm so excited with right order at the foundation? What makes me so excited about this is the fact that I am calling for us all to become the authorities of our own lives, to recognize the author I tie my identity to invites an entity in with the one-dimensional box that I check to say that is what I am, when actually this is what I am, in fact. The fictitious act that makes us think that we must conform to the norm of the act in order to play the part, when the truth is we must write our own story and claim our rights with an RIGHT. Of course, I get right and right order. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, I'm so grateful to be able to use my intuition in such a worthy way. These cards are the way that the day shows up to play. And then we can say the divinity may have a change of mind, but you'll find the love vibration of innocence is inner sense and knowing. It is about flowing with that which is innocent, which is our inner senses, which is knowing, because we are willing to be flowing with the truth instead of what we've been told. Love is vibrational, for it folds where there are gaps, and it shows because that's where the water flows out through the holes. And so why would we want to be part of the holy sea that we cannot see as per the hidden hand that has been playing our cards, playing us? Birthing simplicity is what I am inviting you to do with me as we be confidently exploring our sexuality and the immunity that says others are talking about us because we are doing things in a way that others aren't, and we don't know how to be tamed, for we are the stallion in the story of maybe I write of in Fully Committed, the Sacred Sojourn of Now. If you have not got your own copy and would like to, we have a mastermind starting that is actually going to be on the 9th of November on a Thursday for 7 weeks. We're going to go through 4 parts at a time. And when we do, we will find that when we go ahead of time and do the work, then we can find it easier because we've already marked the spot. The story of maybe is here. I've done the work to mark my copy, which is why it's got a purple heart. So I want to read this story. I remember telling that story to Mom and her husband when they came to visit me on the second day in the science experiment that is 10th floor St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton, which was where I experienced the energetic overlay of the Stanford prison experiment when they wheeled me in. I hadn't realized the sinister strategy behind that small act of demonstrating I couldn't walk on my own 2 feet, so was made an involuntary ward of a system designed to convert men and women into patients, addicts, and dependents, aka prisoners. So that was actually right after the story of maybe, but here we go. One story of significance I wanted to include, I remember telling the police officer who formed me, Brandon, and sent me on a journey I never thought I would take. It's the story of a farmer who had a herd of mares he would let run free by day and who always returned to the barn at night for shelter, except one day they came back with the most magnificent stallion imaginable, who the farmer then had possession of. It was big news in the village, so all the locals came to see the stallion the next day and congratulate the farmer for his profitable acquisition. They congratulated him for being so lucky, and the farmer simply shrugged his shoulders and said, maybe. Well, the farmer's son was a renowned horse trainer who was known to tame even the wildest stallions. So when that magnificent beast bucked him off a few days into training, shattering his leg in several places, all the townspeople came back to share their regrets and confusion at this turn of events, and the bad luck it seemed to be. The farmer once again shrugged and said, maybe. But wouldn't you know, there was a war going on in that country that just hadn't reached their village yet. So when soldiers came days later to round up all the able-bodied men and boys, the farmer's son wasn't able to go. The locals came back, having lost their own sons to the campaign, congratulating the farmer, who they now said was lucky after all. And as you guessed it, the farmer responded with, maybe. Well, the story of Maybe is actually a story about us, for we are the magnificent wild stallion that runs back with a herd of mares because we are literally the stocks that are traded and then we're herded up and rounded up and then made to believe ourselves to be other than we actually are because of the identities that are ascribed to us, meaning scribed for us. We have to see that we are the magnificent, wild, magnificently gorgeous creatures that are creative in nature until we are repressed, depressed, compressed, told that we don't exist, that we aren't important, that we don't matter. All of these lies that are told to us to buy our consciousness and our awareness for a time, they are all designed to make us forget that we are the wild stallions that are not meant to be tamed. There is no one as wild as one that is willing to be fully committed. And I was so fully committed to writing the book called Fully Committed that I got committed in the process of writing it. 5 years it took for me to be able to write this book in a month last year. And what I learned in the process of doing so is that we are all writing the story of our lives, yo. I wonder why you're seeing that side of the page. There was a tremendous amount of magic present in the week leading up to that fateful day when I called 911 to report the system was corrupt and the police were in on it. In retrospect, it was a crazy call to make, and I wouldn't do it again, as the truth I shared in my messy awakening is more apparent than ever. Yet I'm grateful to my soul for going through it without losing my heart for people over profits, as was the story that had become so clear to me at that time. I did harden my heart in some ways and have been working on bringing those heart walls back down in the years since. But I'm not perfect, nor do I claim to be. Perfectly imperfect is good enough for me, and softening after hardship is a process support helps to get through. I am especially grateful because of the timing of it all, because were it not for that experience, there is no way I would have stood my ground the way I have through this attempted corporatocratic takeover that is stealing souls right, left, and center. I also wouldn't necessarily have believed the horror stories that I heard and experienced the energetic patterns of firsthand while in the belly of the beast had I not lived it. My apparently reckless behavior was the result of trying to make something happen. After many attempts to get this book done, which had become much more than just a book, it was literally part of my identity. I saw myself as writing the book, which meant I couldn't finish the book because I was writing it, always in process, never complete, which is the dangerous territory of needing always to be in the healing versus being healed. Significant. Writing it became part of my identity, and not managing to give myself the gift of accepting the 3 manuscripts I'd completed prior to then had emotionally scarred me, and then I had to work through the trauma of all that call led me to, which took a lot of team. That was where I started sharing the story of Maybe, which is not what it's called elsewhere necessarily, but that was what I called it. And if you don't have your copy of this, but you want it because you're going to want to participate in the mastermind group, let me know. You can shoot me an email at Laura at ljeh.ca. Just put it in the comments there for you. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's $25 plus shipping. Or if you have a few people in your area that would be open to doing a book talk or something in your area, I would love to be able to come and talk, because the story we're about to get to, I did not know about when this was coming on. But what I did tune into were energetic patterns I didn't understand then, but now I'm gaining a better insight into, because yesterday I discovered hierocracy. I'm going to write that in for you to be able to see how it's spelt. It's like hero with an I, Because hierocracy is actually populism, which is where the Pope is held as the supreme authority over not just the spiritual, but also temporal affairs. And when there's an affair, it's because there's more than two parties involved. Therefore, it became an affair. So that was when the agent or agent to the principal, which is the second person, got involved. And then basically was made to be more important and significant than what we, as the first person in our own story, actually is. So, this is where the limited version of reality took over the expanded version of reality, because when the creator of all, and if all is all things, then what is all not part of? Or all generally, right? Outside of the dogma of the belief system that others have suggested, purported, taken on, that you're committed to, that you are really loyal to, but this and you don't question it because you're taught not to. Whatever it belief system is about, and I say belief system and BS as an acronym for belief system, though I do appreciate that I am informed every time I say BS, people automatically think that I'm talking about the bull. And that is not the truth, though it might actually be, given populism is connected to the Pope, who was the papa of the house, which was about manorialism, which was the precursor to feudalism. And feudalism is the corporate version of manorialism, which is more so the private version. So we have to really start to see the way that the all created us in the likeness and image of it. So if that is true, and we can just use us instead of trying to say man or woman, is that not the equivalent and actually superior, because there is no them then? Until we invite the government in, which is the fictitious version of reality where men and women are converted into corporate suits that require men and women to fulfill orders that are assigned and ascribed by the top of the corpse, which is the equivalent to the manorial system, which is the top of the household and the liege lord that passes orders down the chain of command. The liege lord is the one that has villains, Villeins. Villains actually are the ones who become villains because they have made a pledge, an oath of allegiance to the liege lord, who they must do the bidings of in order to maintain the public position or the private position within the household, and the position of superiority that it grants them, and the power that comes with it in order to be affiliated with the liege lord at such a close level. So everyone wants that position, and anyone can take on the position because it is the suit which anyone can put on and then dress the part. Well, we have to start taking the suits off of people and remaining in the private sector of the hierarchy of creation, so that we stay in the higher keys of consciousness instead of dropping knees to be knighted by corporations and its actors who would use a sword, which is the sacred word, that turned scared to knight the man or woman who would take on the title of knight with a capitalized K, because the capitis diminutio media minima maxima, all of those ways of capitalizing the original were applied in order to make the knight no longer a man who must then fight for the liege lord at his own expense in order to maintain the position, which is essentially why the prisoners are more free in reality than the guards who are watching them within the corporate system, who can easily be replaced as a cog in a wheel that is going to grind on and is heading straight towards our loved ones. And we can't afford it, because the reality is, when we stop seeing the all as anything other than all of it, and us as anything but all of us, then we see the government is the corporate version of the private sector. And that is where we must be incorporated to go underneath of these corporate rules under the jurisdiction, which is the ability to apply the rules to the one who is in the little box of identity that has been checked in order to get a benefit, privilege in the name of a right, but that is not actually right, because a right must be claimed by the hand of a man or woman who actually says, I claim this, and any other man or woman would have to step forward in order to say, I do not have the right that I say I do, and do it within this reasonable time frame. Because if not, I cannot be blamed to believe that my claim stands as true. So therefore, I am going forward with that which I believe to be true, right, and honorable. To act in good faith is a demonstration that we are still in grace. But to act in bad faith is to not reply to such a request, which is what the public servants can't do without incriminating themselves for upholding a fraud, because the whole thing is perpetuated by continuing to give the corporate nod to the orders that have men and women on the receiving end that are having real harm caused to them, which is actually us. So we change the vernacular, so no longer do we accept that it's okay to let us believe we are separate based on sex of belief, which are sections of the populace who believe certain things compared to the majority who believe something else, the sex, the SECTS, the sex, that we have been so divided by as to have a gender as the genre of drama we perform and exercise with our minds. And then we see the exercise versus the exorcise of the mind versus the body. If you're not giving this message some like and some love, then I don't know what a woman's to do, because I'm giving you the best that I got. And I don't know why I have not got the following that this information warrants, but it's because we haven't got information to see that the information that keeps us in our heads in the hamster wheel of the mental health system is ultimately out of the heart, where we actually feel the resonance of truth and know how good this actually is for the soul. Because when we become more whole, when we stop selling our soul to the entities that have the highest bidder offering something good at the expense of what could be great, we have to be willing to wait in order to actually get the greatness. And sometimes the greatness comes sooner than later, but sometimes we've really got to wait for it. And we've got to stew on it, and we've got to be defined by it and broke down by it and rebuilt by it. And we have to see that it cannot define us, or it's got a far more significant role in our lives than it warrants, because nothing deserves to take front and center of our lives other than our peace, which is our passion, enthusiasm, authenticity, clarity, and encouragement. If we have those, we'll feel full. And our life is always full. It's just, do we have a plate? Do we have a platter? Do we have a whole table? And how full is it? Because we all get the same 86,400 seconds. That is the lottery. We win every day until we don't, and we never know when we won't. So we better live like we're not going to in order to do what must be done. Oh, is that a lot of fun? I hope so. Hierocracy and papalism is a demonstration of the fact that when the de jure government, which is government of the day, created the office of man and woman to step into, to play in the public, that also had an agent and a legal person within the same subverted expression of that which we're not aware we're stepping into when we take on the identity. That is where so much of the corrupting happens. And it's because we didn't know that the law was capitalized every time it was specialized with special eyes to see the lies and then say those lies are true and put them into a disguise that the people say, oh, that's cute. That's interesting. I don't know about that one, but okay. And just accept. Acceptance and consent are implied to be aligned. So we have to really mind ourselves. We have to really dare to actually put our hair up and capture the meaning of things, which is the syntax that is applied to the words, you see. And the sin of tax is that the Income Tax Act actually expired with the War Measures Act, but we haven't challenged it unless we have. And those who generally have or do can't speak publicly because then they sign an NDA or non-disclosure act or agreement, and then they can't say what happened because they found a way out. And then the corporation says, no, 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 you can't tell anyone else. They got to find it honestly because it's all about honor, ironically. So I wonder what all of this means to you and for you. And I also wonder if you knew that a man named Xenophon actually wrote a book called Hiero that is actually a Hiero is actually the story of a tyrant and his perspective, having both lived in the private and also lived as the tyrant too. So I think it's fantastically relevant to the fact that when the law was capitalized, the common law, which is uncapitalized, unspecified, lowercase, the common law was specialized with special eyes and special eyes to make us buy the fact that English common law, King's common law, common hyphen law are different than what the common law is, or the same as. So to clump those all together was to actually diminish the power and the usability of the true common law. So when it was specialized, the L was capitalized. Well, the A was capitalized as well because the heir element is actually the ecclesiastical canon law, which is where the hierarchy or papacy actually comes into the frame. So the Holy See has been the hidden hand behind all of the government corporations, which are actually shell or dummy corps that cannot operate independently of the Holy See, that we cannot see because the Nazis have said, don't see that, look over here instead. So they send the Joker, which the Joker text is actually where they slide something significant in with something that seems small. And then y'all know how that goes. We just laugh, and then the Joker carries on, and then we don't see, we let the Trojan horse in. So the A of the law, when capitalized, is ecclesiastical canon law that is still running and is part of the reason that anyone that has been subscribing to the whole Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta movement, the Practical Lawful Dissent International group, please listen to this. I'm going to have a drink. Let your dreams blossom by realizing you don't need to swear an oath to one of these 25 barons that actually are in a different jurisdiction than what we are as men and women. As a man and woman acting as a baron or as a pope or as a lawyer or whoever, all of these actings, those are less consequential than the fact we are all on common ground under the true common law before it's been capitalized. So anyone subscribing to Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta firstly need to recognize that King John didn't even have the authority to sign that because in 1212, apparently, I wasn't alive to be able to vouch for this information, but from what I've discovered, it was in 1212 that King John made Pope Innocent, I believe it was, the vassal of England, which vassal is holder of title, which means the Pope was actually the highest actor within the English throne or manor house. So King John no longer had the ability to give the final authority because the Holy See had become the higher box that he and they were all under. So the Holy See has been reigning the whole time, and the 1215 Magna Carta, you'll find, doesn't have the validity to stand on because in 1212, when the Pope became vassal, the king lost final vote in his own affairs. So, how do we expect to gain power by basically signing our power and authority over to a baron who stepped forward, who inherited titles through family lines? I'm not quite sure how you can be defined as one of the 25 barons, but ultimately, 25 of them stepped up March 23rd, 2001. It was presented to Parliament and then never addressed, because that would then have to admit that the Holy See was actually the one running the whole show, because the fall of Rome was only the western half. The East maintained its rule under a religious doctrine for the most part, but the West switched into a corporatocratic model, which is why we've had an attempted corporatocratic takeover. And the attempt to incorporate men and women into the public sector is why we're in a mixed war between the public and private. So the public and private are the fight in identity, because every identity we take on, we invite another entity in to feed on our energy, which is why identities are so profitable for the corpse, that convert men and women that can be the prophets with a PH in our own lives to then be profitable and able to profit for a corporation that wants to orate rules for a nation of people that must assimilate in order to relate to those that they're being trained to love versus hate. And that whole notion is part of why there was a Liège revolution against the reigning prince bishop, that is apparently connected to the papal confirmation and imperial liege indult, which I am not quite sure what that is. But what I do know is that all of this information is important to us because we have actually maintained our inferiority to a ghost that requires us to be the host for its gnosis, which is the Holy See. And so it's the whole E of the holy being that is given more credit than others as the creator of all, in order to specify the all to have come from that. But that's the chicken and the egg. And how can any man or woman truly know the origins of all, which is an insanity and a fallacy? And the truth is, we need not know. It's just we must see the God in us, which is the grantor of dominion, rather than the grantor of domain, which is where within the hierarchy of creation under government, you have the de jure government that then became a de facto government. Both of those options actually stemming from a crassy, which has a meaning that you must see. I did share it to me Telegram group, and if you haven't joined that yet, well then please don't wait any longer than you already have, because you're missing out on some really good stuff. But in all seriousness, crassy means power, rule, or government, and is attached to roots to form nouns that mean rule, government. Auto plus crassy, autocracy, is government by one ruler. Theocracy is a country governed by the rule of God or a god. So crassy, the Greek root word krat means rule, and the English suffix crassy means ruled by. So crassy is actually where we get the whole notion of a democracy, or I don't even know all of the crosses that could be, but it seems pretty crazy to me. So is it a conspiracy that there might be some hypocrisy within the crises of all of the crying in the seas that these crazy times have led us to and through, because the creator of all would never lead us to something we could not make it through? It just needed to test us so that we could find the strength within to then know we could. That is the insanity of this entire fallacy, that we are not the creators of the lives that we are living as the responsible authorities and the appropriate authorities. Recognizing those two capacities are actually different within the legal fiction. The responsible authority is the equivalent to, from what I understand, an agent. And if I am wrong, please clarify so I can better share what the truth is, because that is the thing I am committed to most. A responsible authority is one who is able to act on behalf of the principal. So that's what an agent is. But an appropriate authority is the one that can hold the office of man and be the propuria persona, which is the proper person, or the propuria persona. That's the proper man or woman that has firsthand standing in the matter, which is testimony, which is the equivalent of an affidavit, but it is not the same. A testimony is a firsthand account from someone who was there, whereas for a man or woman that has no firsthand testimony, to be able to speak on the matter as if they had some kind of standing is to then only be able to argue the fact. And to argue the fact is to put yourself into the water jurisdiction of the Admiralty and Maritime Law, where it is a commercial, contractual, and constrictive experience to engage in such argumentative dialogue. Because then you dialogue, because you got sawed down, because you battled the wrong saw. And when the Holy See has been what we see through, historically, it has been dangerous for the souls who did and had such a small company because few believed them, that then they saw the inside of a cell that would keep them confined and constrained and away from the public. Sounds like the Mental Health Act to me, which is part of the reason I believe that 4 years ago, my life completely changed when I made that fateful call and got an unexpected result. And y'all, I don't disagree specifically with the determination made by the man that heard me tell the truth and how dangerous it can be in a world where he saw what the true reality is of the world that we're in. So I appreciate everything that went into me gaining the lessons that I did in order to be able to say, I'm going to do it anyway, because if I don't, then who will do what is on my heart uniquely to do? So I continue to speak out, and I continue to go down rabbit holes, and one of them actually led to iconoclasm, which is the action of attacking or assertively rejecting cherished beliefs or institutions or established values and practices. If you actually look up the term menticide, then you'll find that menticide is the systematic dumbing down of the populace. So, and then we have iconoclasm in there on top of that, which is the social belief in the importance of the destruction of icons or other images or monuments, most frequently for religious or political reasons. Then we start to see religion as the religioning of us based on our tribes of belief systems or sects, SECTS, and then politics as the poles I tick, because when you take the joy out of the journey, the urn is all that is left. And an urn, when you see the URN of the vessel that transports the ashes of a body after it has expired, you forget about the E added onto it when left over in the journey, and then see that that urn is actually a ballot box, which means that your inner kingdom or realm is actually where the real magic takes place when you're at the helm as the man or woman in the office of man or woman when in the public, but also knowing you can step back out of the public in order to be in your private capacity and claim your right to privacy, for then any other man or woman to have to contest your claim. And if they have no firsthand testimony or experience in the matter, then why are they speaking? They have no right unless they claim the right to, and they must do so as a man or woman once you put them on their capacity, once you put them on notice in that capacity. So it's very significant to pay attention to all of these elements of real versus unreal instead of fiction versus nonfiction. What do you mean nonfiction is real? Why not just call it real? Well, because that would mean that we would be actually helping the people to see through the deception of where our focus is being directed. So there is great power in focus and intended attention. So we must be willing to actually see through those areas where we have been leaking our energy. And then we will be able to call it back in more responsible and significant ways. Now, we are coming on to the final 10 minutes. And I am wanting to let you know that on November 10th and 11th, at Soul's Path in Blackstock, Ontario, we will be gathering for some intentional networking, roundtable meetings, as well as filming for a docuseries. It's a casting call for those who are willing to be themselves in good company with others who are willing to be real too. And we're going to come together and we're going to find out who is who and who's doing what and how we can come together and organically actually assemble. How we can be the ones who came into formation because we cared enough to find out who was in our nation. And we saw that man-made nations are just that they are not the highest capacity of what is possible. They are just what we have been told is the cap of the glass ceiling in consciousness, because frequency nets are the way that our consciousness is capped. So a frequency net, what is that? But the glass ceiling we have been told of by those who have climbed and rose high enough to be able to hit it and cap what they are capable of or believe themselves to be. Pushed, threatened, can't go higher. Blah! It's like we get so uncomfortable when we have those opportunities to grow beyond where we ever have before. We stretch our self-image, and then what's more is we get fearful that we might not be good enough for that position, you see. So we have forgot within the mixed war between the public and private that we are more powerful in our private capacity. And even though we are social creatures that want to belong, we also need to be able to be free so that we can be authentically the one that we've been waiting for. And to see that be the change you seek in this world is not actually about the world as a whole, but to see that every single domain is a reality, a domain that you can step into, like a virtual reality, every single website, you see. And when we start to see the simplicity of identity being a world in which we find belonging and identity from identifying with that construct of what it means to be part of that group or this group instead of those, we have the ability to choose, and we must use that ability to choose responsibly and wisely, which is why you are invited to join the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Assembly on Telegram. You are also invited to subscribe to my website, ljeh.ca, which will give you an opportunity to receive emails from me directly. And I am going to be launching a self-image challenge where we are grounding our highest timeline for the month of November. And as a certified coach, teacher, speaker with the John Maxwell team from 2011 as a founding partner, I have been working on creating a process to be able to take you on, to guide you through the inner journey you will go through as you become the one who you've been waiting for. So I very much do look forward to being able to hopefully see you on November 10th and 11th when we come together for an experience like no one has had before. Maybe someone has, I don't know. But what I know for sure is that when we come together with a vision to be better, we can truly be the change we seek in a world that requires us to be a better version of ourselves than we have been before. For if we do what we've always done, we will get what we've always got. But if we are willing to do something new, with a few new friends too, then we can have a better experience than we ever could have if we stayed isolated, if we tried to get ourselves to a state of perfection to the point of never leaving the comfort zone of our home in order to roam and find where we are. Now is all we have. So if we are willing to actually ground ourselves in this now moment, we will be able to do something that you would only wish to have been able to do if you were weaving an intentional inner web too. Which is why I'm glad that you came today to hear me say a few rhymes and play with the way that I share the words that I use, and to make sure that we don't confuse our identities with the usufructory system that makes us usufruct be the way that usufruct uses profits off of the use of someone else's property and can abuse it too, unless we do what we need to make sure that we claim our rights and then stand on those claims and make sure that names get taken of those who stand in position to prevent us from being able to move forward as we wish to, or who wish to imply some impositions that would change the position we were able and willing to take. So, with that said, I will make this be the final message for today. I would love to be able to play with you in the month of November, and just really want to make sure you save the day for November 10th and 11th. The 10th will be an intentional networking group that is open to the public. The morning of November 9th will be a private event, but it's an exceptional one that you will want to be part of if you can be. And the afternoon, we'll have a public event as well, where we are having the casting call to be yourself and come be part of the docu-series, where we will actually go through the sacred sojourn of the soul and become more whole in good company with others who are willing to do the inner work too. So without further ado, I'm going to say namaste. Lover J, namaste, namago for today. Namago.